People often ask me whether it's better to do the same physical practice over and over again or to vary the practice. And actually, the answer is both are important things to do. What you practice is what you get good at. And I'm talking as a physiotherapist. If you train a particular muscle in a particular way, you'll get good at what you train. Problem is sometimes if you're trying to achieve something, you can't always do the final thing that you're trying to do. You have to somehow do little bits of it, work in small segments until you build up to the final activity. But in terms of what we practice, generally, I find that I get a good result if I practice something enough times that it actually becomes part of my habit. And for me, that usually takes, depending on the activity, up to a couple of years. So if I adopt a new practice of posture, movement, breathing, mental control as part of my daily routine, often I'll do that for about 2 years. And then I just let it go. And in traditional cultures like India, this is a very important principle, the principle of make habits, break habits. And I could say it loosely and say make good habits, break bad habits, but any habit becomes a problem in a way. You see, a habit has a way of making a mark at a molecular level, and it creates almost like a receptor site on individual cells. And everything you're addicted to, like if you're addicted to opium, heroin, if you're addicted to sugar, this creates excessive receptor sites on the cells, which then prevent the access of other possibilities to enter that cell or access that particular part of your biology. So when we make a habit, the same sort of thing is probably happening at a molecular level. So what we don't want is to be always doing things over and over again the same way. And when I first started teaching, I was very inspired by a couple of my teachers. One of them was this wonderful Japanese policeman who taught me. His name was Takao Nakazawa, and I have a lot of respect and honor for him. He's since passed away. And he taught me classes for about a year. And at the end of 6 months, he said to the group, do you realize that even after 6 months, I've never given you the same exercise twice? And we were seeing him 3 hours a day every morning for 5 mornings a week. And he never even gave us the same downward facing dog stretch. Not once, not more than once in 6 months. Every day was not just new routines, but new exercises, new movements. To me, it was very inspiring. And I had a similar experience when I met BKS Iyengar in India. When I was about 25, he also made every class unique, every class different. And so when I first started teaching them, I also wanted to be like these inspiring teachers and teach something new every class. And for me, it was exciting as a teacher to teach something new every class, but I found that not many people really learned. Not many people really continued the practice or had any idea of what to do when they got home. So sometime after I met Iyengar, I fell into the Ashtanga Vinyasa practice, which is, for those who don't know it, a routine practice where you practice the same set of posture, movement, and breathing for, an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Sometimes the practices would be 3 hours when I used to first do them. And this would be repeated over and over and over again. And so when we started to formulate our classes, we then started to develop routines. And we found that routines would be very useful for people to learn. And by giving the same practice over and over again, it gives people a chance to learn a routine. It gives you a chance to learn a routine. And then turn off that thinking part of your brain and start to work more with the feeling part of your brain. But if it's done too much, the problem with doing things over and over again physically can become a problem because we're not symmetrical people. And so because of our lifestyle of maybe always writing with one hand or doing asymmetrical things, like I played guitar like this for years. I sat in a bench seat of a Toyota Corona for 20 years, and I actually realized I'd been in the car for more than a year after 12 years of driving 2 hours a day. You're in the car for one whole year. And I was sitting asymmetrically in this bench seat, pressing mainly with my right foot. And that was not the best thing for my body physically, because the more you repeat patterns that are slightly, even slightly asymmetrical, the more detriment it makes to your body. So, if we do the same practice repeatedly, day after day after day, with our very asymmetrical bodies because of our unnatural lifestyle, we tend to start making little mistakes. So say, for example, when we bend backwards, because of the asymmetry we create in our life from sitting prolonged periods of time, causing tension at the front of our hips and the lower back. When we bend backwards, doing simple postures like the upward facing dog, when you bend backwards, it's often only one or two vertebral segments that bend backwards, and maybe many parts of the spine don't bend backwards at all. Also, if you're always bending forward only at the hips, the front of the hips will play a problem as well. And when we're going sideways and twisting, because of the asymmetry created by things like one-handed writing and asymmetrical musical instruments and other activities, even vacuuming or whatever people do, they're often asymmetrical. It means our spines, by the time we're mature, are slightly twisted. And I have a very, very slight twist in my spine. So I know that if I'm facing forward with my hips, my trunk is actually slightly twisted to my left. And of course, it's hardly noticeable to anyone but a trained eye. But it means that if I purely bend to the right side, I don't go as far as when I bend to the left side. And it means that when I'm doing my exercise, my movements, my postures, I can inadvertently try and be symmetrical in the outer form of my practice, but internally I'm compressing more on one side of my body and less on the other, or vice versa. And this eventually can lead to a wear and tear that can cause pain and injury, eventually things like osteoarthritis, etc. Not to mention less obvious things like improper blood flow into the body. So the problem with doing a regular practice that's always the same sometimes manifests physically. So I find that the best balance is to do a practice which is the same and repeated for a period of time, not too long that it impacts the physical body, but enough time that it goes away from that thinking part of the brain and comes into more of a habitual meditative type of practice, and more in the feeling brain, and you more meditate while doing it. When I say meditate, I mean when you get into that state which the athlete might call the zone or the flow state. And that's 5 things. So the meditative state in my form, in my idea, is 1, it's a sustainable practice. 2, it's engaging. Engaging meaning exciting enough to be interesting, but not so exciting it becomes stressful, and calming enough to be relaxing, but not so calming it becomes boring. And so that's engaging for the mind. And in this engaging place, you're totally engrossed in your activity. And when they've done studies on brainwave analysis, it seems that the default network in the brain is shut down. So you then no longer think of past or future, you're right in the present moment. And you don't think of yourself and the activity as being 2 separate things, you're connected. In fact, in the meditative state then, you are connected with your activity in the present moment. There's no separation. And so this is a fantastic place to be, because if you can be connected to something on the outside by doing something at the same time which makes you feel connected, then that is the essence of total health, happiness, and leads to longevity, I think, or the possibility of longevity. So to enter a meditative state will take some time with any activity. It's unlikely you can enter a meditative state the first time you learn something. So by repeating it over and over again, it gives you a chance to have the thinking brain turn off and the more feeling, repetitive brain turn on. That repetitive feeling part of your consciousness. But done too long, you can start to get physical problems. So for a couple of reasons then you can see that it's good to make habits, but also good to break the habits. Let them go after a while. And this idea of make habits, break habits is a very old principle in many traditional cultures, and it has a lot of merit on a physical, physiological, and even molecular level inside the body, and a mental level as well. Thank you.